So we're at the number 2 spot. To be completely fair, I don't feel this movie technically deserves to be here. While from a structure, writing, and storytelling standpoint, I feel it is superior to 2014's Out of the Shadows, I think it's nowhere near as good at being a Ninja Turtles movie than that film. And ultimately, I think being a good TMNT product is more important than being an okay family movie. Okay to great family movies are a dime a dozen. Good TMNT movies are not. Out of the Shadows fully embraced the franchise, and most of all, the type of turtles that was most popular when Secret of the Ooze released, whereas Secret of the Ooze seemed to deliberately avoid giving young fans at the time what they actually wanted from a Ninja Turtles movie. So why is this ranked above Out of the Shadows on my list? One word: nostalgia. The memories of this movie being hyped, marketed, released, seen by me in the theaters as a kid, watched repeatedly at home on VHS by me as a kid, and just the way my world was at the time and how fun life was just make this movie extra close to my heart. But there are for sure many flaws with this nugget of nostalgia. There are a few tiny ones, like the weird design of Donatello where he has a tall fat chin and a tiny thin upper snout that makes his mouth look like a toilet. But those are mostly unimportant. Sure, he looks much worse than the other turtles for some reason, but I'm talking the big problems, and I'll go over what I think the two biggest flaws are here. One, the tone. I'm not usually one to prefer darker and more serious Ninja Turtles stories. It can work fantastically sometimes, like The Last Ronin, but generally I like my TMNT to be more on the fun, goofy side. Like most Ninja Turtle fans, I love the franchise because I loved it as a kid. Most of us didn't even know much darker alternatives existed until after the dawn of social media. I do think it's important to have darker turtles out there for fans of that style to enjoy, but Ninja Turtles has always succeeded at most when it's a children's franchise. But the 1990 movie just knocked it out of the park. Sure, there were loads of goofy jokes, one-liners, slapstick gags, and hip pop culture references to satisfy the fans of the kid-friendly Turtles that we all knew and loved then. But it was blended in with the essence and many plot elements of the original Mirage comics, achieving a silly yet darker and more mature TMNT than us kids were used to at the time. It felt like the franchise was maturing with us. After seeing that movie, Turtles seemed more badass than ever. But Secret of the Ooze entirely drops the darker, more mature elements of the first film. I'm not one to lie and say the first movie is a serious drama on the level of Rain Man, but for a goofy kids film, it knew when to get serious, scary, and even emotional. For little kids, it feels like a serious drama at times. Secret of the Ooze, on the other hand, is basically just all diet soda version of the first movie. No more serious fight scenes, they're all played for laughs. Most in the first movie were too, but again, it knew when to get serious. The jokes in Secret of the Ooze also never stop. The Turtles are spewing cheesy one-liners from start to finish, and they're way less funny than the first movie for the most part. They're cracking jokes for the sake of keeping a quota of X amount of jokes per minute, as opposed to saying jokes when they're appropriate, like in the first movie. Even Shredder, who was treated as a terrifying threat in the first film, is reduced to a punchline when baby mutants hug him and call him Mama. I believe some parents did complain about the 1990 film being too dark or violent, so this tone was likely a reaction to that. But it is sad to see how little faith the filmmakers had in their younger audience. The second big problem, as I've said for other TMNT movies so far, is a lack of faithfulness to the source material. They came so close to incorporating characters kids knew and loved from the franchise at that time, but always just missed the mark perfectly. The Professor character, for example, has no reason to not be named Baxter Stockman. He looks almost identical to the cartoon show Baxter at the time, right down to the stupid bow tie and lab coat. The only reason I can think of as to why they didn't name him Baxter Stockman is because he becomes good by the end of the film, and Baxter was established as a villain. Even though Baxter's usually up to no good, his partnerships with Shredder in the cartoon are almost always reluctant ones. Shredder uses and manipulates him, so the dynamic between the two characters in the movie was already pretty spot on to Baxter and Shredder. But the most obvious case of them avoiding using established characters is Razar and Tokka. When all I saw was the poster with their shadows in the background as a kid, I was told it was Bebop and Rocksteady. I do distinctly remember thinking the shadows looked nothing like them, but most of us were expecting them. It made sense. They were Shredder's two main mutant underlings in the cartoon show, the toy line, the video games, the Archie comics. To kids in 1991, it made perfect sense that Bebop and Rocksteady would be in the TMNT films. The most popular rumor I've heard as to why Rocksteady and Bebop were omitted for Toka and Rahzar is a licensing technicality. Supposedly, New Line Cinema only had rights to a very small selection of turtle characters. But I have also heard that this is indeed not the case. Some say they did have the rights, but opted not to include them, usually claimed to be at the request of Eastman and Laird, who, according to some, hated Bebop and Rocksteady and never wanted them to be part of the franchise. But to be honest, even that excuse sounds a bit odd when you break it down. Because if Eastman and Laird hated the idea of Shredder having two big brainless brute mutants working for him, then why would they give the okay for Rahzar and Toka? I don't know for sure, and we may never know the truth, but my personal theory has always been due to physical limitations. While the four turtles may look very different from humans, their short snouts, human-like proportions, and general similarities in facial features like placement of mouth and cheeks and eyes allow for humans to believably man the animatronic suits and make them emote, move, and lip sync convincingly enough for audiences. However, when you start adding big, long, crazy-shaped rhinoceros and warthog heads and gigantic beastly bodies, it can ruin all of that. Long snouts and jagged fangs and protruding ugly teeth are far harder to make convincingly mimic human mouth movements and lip syncing. Their faces as a whole are so different from human faces, emoting altogether wouldn't work as well as it does with the four turtles. Bebop and Rocksteady would have to talk and express emotion, or they wouldn't be the guys everyone wanted them to be on the big screen. So I feel because they knew it would be too costly to try to make state-of-the-art suits with giant rhino and pig heads that can emote and talk like humans, and because they knew fans wouldn't want them just being voiceless, grunting monsters, they decided to create new mutant villains who could be voiceless, grunting monsters and no one would care. Sure, Rahzar and Toka technically talk, but they don't really talk. The animatronic heads they have are fine enough for what they do. They can't do full dialogue like Bebop and Rocksteady would have to do, but they can handle and even though Rahzar and Toka do look badass as hell, there's no denying their suits look a lot less convincing, stiffer, and lifeless than the turtles. While the turtles look believable as living anthropomorphic reptiles, Rahzar and Toka admittedly do look like humans awkwardly trying to shuffle around in big, uncomfortable suits. Really cool suits, but obvious suits nonetheless. Even though there's plenty of fun, goofiness, fighting, slapstick, and pop culture from the time pumped into this film to distract us from the flaws as kids and ultimately win us over more than Turtles 3, and this is definitely more TMNT than Turtles 3, this movie was already showing signs that the film franchise from this point on was not going to do what the fans were hoping for. At least we still got the goofy jokes and cartoony nature of the '87 cartoon show. Fans of the comics who ate well with the first film got nothing this time around. Even the TCRI company name on the Ooze canister was needlessly changed to TGRI in this movie. The one thing that could have been from the comics, and they still changed it. And aside from all of that, the grand finale with Super Shredder, while a really cool idea, is still one of the most disappointing final battles in a movie. I remember being so underwhelmed as a kid. When the dock collapses on him, I swore he wasn't done, and he was gonna bust out and the turtles were gonna have to take him down for real now. But no, a few wooden beams fall on him and he is dead. Getting thrown off a building, landing in a dumpster, and being crushed by a trash compactor as a normal human does nothing to him but mess up his outfit a bit. But having some wooden beams fall on you when you're a 15-foot monster man? Totally dead. I never even got why he started destroying the dock to begin with. You're Super Shredder, you can't think of any other way that you can kill these turtles? So why the hell is this movie my number 2 favorite Ninja Turtle movie? I've literally had nothing nice to say about it this whole review so far. Well, like I said, nostalgia. This movie is drenched in 1991. From the lingo, the music, the Bart Simpson drinking glass, and of course the famous Vanilla Ice scene, this movie is head to toe, possibly better than any other TMNT product. A showcase of everything a little kid thought was cool in 1991. Even Kino, a cool, kick-ass martial arts teenage dude who delivers pizza, being the new best friend of the Turtles, was very of the times. There were lots of movies then about inhuman creatures befriending hip kids and teens, and even the whole child or teen martial arts comedy movie was a common trope in the 90s, like Three Ninjas and even garbage like Surf Ninjas, which starred Ernie Reyes Jr., Kino himself. The movie is just a massive time capsule, and even though it fails to represent a lot of things we wanted represented from TMNT, it still feels like TMNT. All the pizza eating, the New York City atmosphere, the Foot Clan, the sewers, even the lighting is so appropriately TMNT and of the time. In those regards, the movie is spot on. And because of those things, the excellent setting and atmosphere, the deluge of trendy early 90s culture, the sheer fun and excitement of it, and the fact that it was still such a novelty to watch TMNT on the big screen in live action, this movie was still a massive deal for me as a kid, despite its shortcomings. It made up for its flaws by just being a fun, exciting, crazy movie and such an important part of our childhoods. But while it may not be the Turtles sequel that we truly wanted, it's still my second favorite Ninja Turtle movie of all time. And one side note I wanted to bring up. So in the show Cobra Kai, which is awesome and probably my favorite TV show from the past 10 or more years, Ninja Turtles is mentioned several times. Donatello is mentioned by name, and it's even mentioned he used a bow and was even the character Stingray's favorite turtle. Bebop and Rocksteady are also mentioned by name. Now this isn't weird, especially due to the fact that a large part of the show is appealing to people who were kids when the Karate Kid movies came out, like myself. People in such a world would undoubtedly reference TMNT as much as we do. But what makes it weird is, in Secret of the Ooze, Michelangelo references the Karate Kid. When they're cleaning April's apartment, he does the wax on, wax off line in an attempt to be funny. So, what kind of paradox is this? Clearly, The Karate Kid was a movie in the world of Secret of the Ooze, but somehow Ninja Turtles was also a popular series back in the day in the world of The Karate Kid. So what would happen if Danny LaRusso were to watch Secret of the Ooze? Would he have some crazy Truman Show moment when that line happens and start feeling his whole life is a movie? Or maybe in the Karate Kid Cobra Kai world, TMNT was exactly the same except they never had Secret of the Ooze. Maybe they actually got a movie with Bebop and Rocksteady instead. Or maybe they do have Secret of the Ooze, it's identical except that one line. But this raises the question, which one's the real world? Well, obviously they're both fictional, but since both exist within each other as media in their worlds, then of the shared worlds, which one is the real one? I'd actually assume it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, since they referenced Karate Kid decades before the other. Or what if both exist? The 90s TMNT movies and Cobra Kai take place in the exact same universe. Maybe Turtles isn't a franchise there, but true events. They're world-famous heroes by this point, and Bebop and Rocksteady are real too. That's why Daniel-san really had to move away from the tri-state area, all the damn mutants. Or maybe Bebop and Rocksteady are fictional. Razar and Toka were real, and the 87 cartoon was made as a cartoon about real-life heroes. But that still doesn't explain how Mike quoted Karate Kid. Well, maybe between Karate Kid 3 in 1989 and Secret of the Ooze in 1991, Danny was visiting his family from New Jersey and New York City and met the Turtles. They exchanged martial arts stories and he told them about wax on, wax off. Or maybe Hamato Yoshi was from Okinawa and knew Mr. Miyagi, and Splinter actually trained the Turtles with his methods the whole time, so Mike thought he was imitating Splinter, not Miyagi. But then Playmates recently released action figure 2-packs of TMNT versus Cobra Kai, so they do coexist, or maybe they're just two different franchises owned by different unrelated companies that just reference pop culture to be funny and don't even know the other one did it 30 years ago, and I'm just being a dumbass. Do all the liking and subscribing and the sharing and the bell stuff.